Okay, very good afternoon to
Afternoon,
Mr. Bob Glassup in his palatial palace out here. So we've come here to talk, well, a little bit nostalgic really, and you've got projects and everything else, but let's go to the very early days, when you were sort of members of custom clubs and things like that. So that was early 70s and so on. So what got you into those cars originally?
I think what happens is that you're a teenager and you're buying the magazines, you're seeing posters on walls of American muscle cars. So it was always kind of, it was kind of like there was something I wanted to do, and then and being the 70s, it was a bit different, a bit unusual. So of course, then you obviously try and find some ways to actually afford to buy your first muscle car, and then particularly those times, actually they were quite cheap to buy because they're gas guzzlers, etc. So, and that was really piqued my interest. So I wanted an American muscle car, got into the whole scene. And then obviously as you go round the show circuit, you start seeing race cars.
Yeah.
I start bumping into people. You join a local hot rod and custom car club, which happened to be the Apple County Cruisers at the time.
Yeah.
There were some lads there that were doing drag racing. So you think, okay, the show and shine is great fun. It was great family entertainment. I could take my young kids with me as well, which is always important to include the family.
Yeah.
But then I thought, I want to race. Then I thought, well, what can I race? And obviously your budget will dictate what you can afford to buy. And obviously the lads that I was hooked up with at the time ran a Topolino car, and it had Jag engine in it at the time. It shows you how early that was,
Yeah.
But obviously they went over to Chevy later on, and I thought actually I wanted a Topolino. So I thought, where do I go and get one? How do I build it? But Richard and Lee, obviously being there and more experienced, had obviously had their own car, were up for giving me a hand. So it was a case of really then finding a body, a chassis, and then the running gear for it.
Yeah.
So then I was then hooked line and sinker to build my own first nostalgic. Technically, wasn't so nostalgic then because there were a few Topos around.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I had a Ford Capri Mark 1, which I'm quite passionate about my Mark 1 Capris, and that still gave me some track time while I was still doing getting the Topolino together. So we used to go to Avon Park quite a bit in the early days and sat on the pod with it and running the sort of street classes. And I thought then really the bug was really bitten then, and then I couldn't wait to get the Topolino out on the track.
And you did?
And I did. It ran, I think my early days was sort of 11 seconds. It felt extremely fast.
And what was the motor in that one?
The Topolino, we called the car Bubblegum, and we ended up calling the drag car Bubblegum. We kind of took over from the Capri because obviously it was quicker than the Capri. Naturally aspirated, running on just a single carb, but that really just did put the hook into me for drag racing. And pretty much the whole social background to drag racing, because
it is very family, isn't it? Everybody helps each other out.
Exactly.
Generally.
Yeah.
So 98% of everyone talk to each other and everything.
Yeah.
That's like anything, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think it was quite nice because it's quite family orientated as well.
Of course, yeah.
So as a travelling up from Somerset to the pod, it's quite a long tow. It's about a 4-hour tow for us. But you could join others that were coming from the similar area. So there was this camaraderie going on in the West Country, and you would arrive at the track, and whether it was sunny or whether it was raining, you're still having a
home
ball.
of Dennis Priddle.
Yeah, Dennis. Yeah, oh my gosh, he was a West Country lad as well. Bumped into a few times when we were down at the Haynes Museum. We ended up taking the car to a few shows at the time. Yeah. So there's actually quite a bit of history in Somerset, funny enough, especially with some of the drag racers. But that was that was it. I was sold on the whole, and for the Topolino, really, there was quite a few around at the time, and you could then, once you have a basic body style, you could really then change the engine, to suit how fast you wanted to go. So it probably took a few years, but then I gradually built up to buying a a methanol engine. I just remembered one funny story. I'd bought this engine for the Topolino off of Jim Seaward. He had this slingshot, and he was selling the engine out of it, and it was a petrol injected. It had a Crowler injection system on it, and I thought, oh, that engine would be great. So I went down to see him, and I bought it, and that was the engine I was going to put in this Topolino. But I suppose really supercharged was the way to go, because you get a lot more performance. So I think I was at Avon Park at the time, and there was a lad selling a supercharger on a table. It was just the blower and some pulleys and a belt. And I thought, well, that's great, because now I can just supercharge it, you know. So I bought it, and I went back to the lads in the pits, and I said, look what I've got. I said, now we can just bolt this on and we can go supercharge racing. And they just fell about laughing. And I said, what are you doing, Bob? And I said, well, take the injection system off and we'll put the supercharger on. And they went, no. You can't just do that. You can't change everything else in the motor. So there was a bit of a learning curve in my early days about, what you have to put together to put a car together, you know.
So you was an outlaw with no idea then.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Completely no idea. So, yeah. And of course, I suppose really in a way, it was quite funny because it created a bit of a laugh about.
Yeah, absolutely.
We quite enjoyed the whole progress of doing this. So, yeah, but then I'd convinced myself that I was going to go supercharged, and then
you had the bits. Really,
I had the bits. So, incidentally, it was a pile of rubbish I'd bought actually, because it wasn't very good. Which again, I learnt a hard lesson, about buying parts as well. But so then the momentum didn't stop. I decided that I would run the car for a few years. We did this Super Series at Avon Park with Terry Gibbs when he was running those meetings for about 5 years, I think, in total. And then I thought, well, I need to go quicker, and then obviously I think I got into the 9s then, I vaguely remember, and then obviously then you look around and an opportunity to buy another engine. It came with another car, like all these things sometimes, so I ended up buying the whole car. But I took the engine out, and then that put us well into the 7s at the time. It was a whole different kit and caboodle then. So we transformed the car, repainted it, and at the time I had to get a new chassis for the car, because obviously putting a bigger engine in means you need a new chassis, because the old, which would have been the old car, was the ex-Curbdozer Sunoco car. It was getting a bit dated, and I bumped into Norm Wilden of Two Engine Dragster fame, and it's when he lived in Bicester at the time. And I said, oh, would you be able to craft me a new chassis? And he said, yeah, I could do that. It did take a bit of while, but I've ended up with a new chassis and a complete different engine plant. And then we ended up getting into the 7s, which was brilliant, and obviously, like all these things, you get used to driving a particular style of car. So the faster you go, you kind of learn a little bit about handling as well, and it's quite exciting at times, But so yeah, it sort of that's led me down the nostalgic route. And in all fairness, I've been a Topolino altered nostalgic driver for quite a long time.
And you're enjoying it, of course.
Yeah, I think it's an experience. I mean, I do like door cars. I like dragsters, and generally I've had a go in most other types of drag cars. But I think the Topo or the altered was obviously your favourite ride. It's quite exhilarating.
Yeah.
You feel a little bit exposed when you drive it.
Yeah.
But we took it everywhere. Hockenheim, we even took it to the States for a weekend at Bakersfield, which was quite good fun.
Yeah, I mean 2 weeks to get out there, was it?
Well, actually, we put it. I had to miss a whole season because we put it on the boat. I think it was like July, and they shipped the boat, the car, and the trailer, and what equipment we could get into the trailer over, and it took about 6 weeks to actually get. And then what I had to do then is fly into the States, into Los Angeles, and we hired a camper, went down and to the port authorities, and there it was, all ready for me to hook up. We hooked it up and then drove to Bakersfield. You know,
superb, yeah,
lovely, great fun.
yeah. Bakersfield, not lovely place. So yeah, you've still got that thing in your head about the Capri, haven't you, as well?
Yeah, I think obviously then, you know, I'm a bit of Capri fan. I started racing, particularly Avon Park at the time, in a 70s Capri with a small block in it. It was a kind of a street strip car, so I could drive it on the road. And so I've still owned that car to date now. But obviously you go through this Capri stage where I'm a fan of Capris. So I decided that when we were going over to doing the funny car, I thought actually it'd be quite nice to do something nostalgic or have a nostalgic car, having been to the States and seeing how it was going over in there with some of the early cars, the Plymouth Arrows, the Monza bodied cars. But again, I suppose really it's one of them things that you sort of suddenly you go, do you know what? Yeah, let's just do a full Capri. It's a bit mad as it was at the time because obviously there was no one actually could make one. Yeah. So the pain of actually taking the time out to make the mould and getting the body made for the car took a bit more time than I would have liked it to have done. But the end product was that we ended up with a full Capri funny car.
Yeah.
I think the only other one that I'm aware of was there was one in Australia. Someone was running a Capri funny car there. And obviously everybody then at the time was saying, oh, right, that's like Sneaky Glowworm, you know. And I said, well, it is a bit different from Sneaky Glowworm. But of course, because it's a Capri, people associated it with something that was around in the 70s, you know. So it was quite good fun having something that's nostalgic, even though it is more updated, you know.
Yeah, definitely. So now, I mean, there seems to be this rumour saying you're building a Capri, and I'm thinking, well, no, actually, I can't say anything because and obviously you're going to Topolino.
Yeah, I think.
So is that now a bit more public knowledge now, or?
No, I haven't really made a big deal of it. I'm not one to shout from the rooftops until I see my projects coming together a bit more.
Yeah.
Because and trouble is like all motoring things, everybody's sort of talking about they want to do this and they want to do that, and then a lot of it just kind of falls, oh yeah, we've heard all that before, you know.
Exactly.
So I tend to be a little bit more reserved that way, and I don't really make a song and dance. But in my head, I try and put a plan together of what I want, and then it's a case of really then putting all the little pieces together and how am I going to do this. And then the same as when I did the Capri funny car, and in essence it probably took me 5 or 6 years to actually put the whole project together. You know, what people see when they see it at the racetrack, it didn't just materialise. It takes a long time to
you have all the bits and the body to fit
and all the drama that goes with trying to get someone to make it, and then does it fit, and then you've got to mechanically put it together. And so it was quite a task really.
Are you a spanner man or?
No, I work on cars, you know, like anybody, you know, but I'm more of a DIY person. I don't really have, I suppose really I have some knowledge, but I don't really have the mechanical ability to build chassis.
So that's where you build your team.
So I try, you know, I surround myself with some really good, hopefully clever people, my family. But I do look towards people like Andy Robertson in particular that can help me with chassis building, mechanical stuff. I've got a couple of really nice engine builders that help me. So I kind of work with various different trades to get what I want. But I don't mind getting dirty and dusty, and you know, if we have to. And as you know, with running any race car, particularly at that level, there's quite a lot of other work that has to be done.
And every time you're going out, it's an expensive weekend, isn't it?
It can be, and so I've been a little bit fortunate in as far as I've been able to you know, fund my sport, you know, work and that, and obviously the family have pulled behind me. My kids love it, so they kind of encourage me to do the things I do. My wife, bless her, she's been on this 40-year trail with me as well, 50-year trail I think. It's quite funny because when we first got together 50 years ago this year. I think she must have had an inkling, because we'd bought our first house, and at the time I'd bought this Camaro, which was my first American car, and I really wanted some aftermarket wheels for it. And I thought, well, I can't afford them really. At the time, I had a vague remember that they were going to be about 150 quid each. So, and there was a company in Bristol that opened this new shop that's selling aftermarket American wheels and side pipes and everything, because it was in the day of the custom car world. And so I'd sold our three-piece suite from the living room to buy these wheels. And when she came home, where's the three-piece suite, which was actually donated to us.
Just sit on them.
And she was a little bit shocked, to say the least. But then I offered her an alternative. I said, okay, I've got the money and I can buy the wheels, so I'll make you a new settee. She said, where are you going to do that? So I went down to like the B&Qs of this world, and I'd bought some wood, and I cut up an old settee, and I'd made her a new three-piece suite.
Legend.
And we sat in that three-piece suite for many a year. So and I got my wheels. So that was it. So that was.
I can't imagine you getting away with that one.
So no, that's probably
Well,
today.
she would build the chair, but
Yeah, even my neighbours were a bit shocked when they used to come into the house and see this really strange-looking three-piece suite that I'd actually homemade. But I was chuffed, mate, because in the garage was my Camaro on a new set of wheels. So that was the start of married life for me, really. So,
yeah.
So, you know, and may it continue, I hope.
Absolutely, yeah. Can imagine you back in the day watching Coronation Street and that.
Yeah. So,
or not.
No, or not, no.
So there's your family side as well. Obviously, you know, you've got Matt and you've got Holly.
Mm-hmm.
And they raise...
Yeah. Holly, I mean, particularly Matt, obviously he grew up around the cars, the American cars, the race cars and everything. And especially in the early custom car show days, where we used to take cars to custom car shows, they would always come. Even as toddlers, we would go camp for the weekend. And if it's an indoor show, you know, we'd take part in that, or an outdoor show. So they've kind of always been around the car scene.
Yeah.
For their sins, bless them. And so they've grown up with it. As they got older and got into their teens, they really got more involved in the modified scene. And of course that was probably, in those days, was the early days of the hot hatch side of it, which was growing quite fast. So they started modifying their own cars. They got involved in the whole modified golf scene, and they've sort of kind of gone down there. I've helped with that side of it a little bit, although it's a different genre to the drag racing and hot rod world.
Yeah.
But of course, they run similar, side by side. So, and then Holly, from I think she was sort of 9 or 10 at the time, we bought her first junior drag racing, because Terry actually started the very first junior drag racing at Avon Park. And he was trying to collect a sort of 5 or 6 cars, and Holly was one of those very first drivers of the juniors, and so was his daughter Katie. So so we was right at the very start of the junior drag racing thing. So, and obviously being a young lady at the time, and Katie Gibbs, obviously she was of a similar age. So she drove that for a few years. Then she met a fella, and she's now married with a kid, and she's just recently started to get back into it with us. She's been driving my son's street strip Camaro, and probably over the next with the other car, the new car being built, if I get some time in between that, I've got a Capri door slammer which she can drive now, so she wants to get back in, more involved in getting behind the seat.
Why not? Yeah.
Matty obviously is still he's one of my crew members, but also he drove the Altered in the early days. I'm not sure about this one yet. when it gets finished, it's a bit could be a bit crazy to drive, but we'll see.
Similar steering wheel.
Yeah, it's got steering wheel. I think that's about it.
Yeah. I mean, so your future then, we're looking at.
Yeah,
this
so really taking the story to where we are today is that the funny car, we did about 3 to 4 seasons with that. Got to learn a little bit more about the whole nitro deal, along with other race teams like Tony Betts and Tim with the Apache. And for me, it was a case of really, I loved the funny car, but I'd always been an altered driver.
Yeah.
And I suppose after 25 years plus of driving an altered, you kind of think, is the funny car for me, you know? But then I suppose compounding that with the Topolino, which I did dearly miss at the time, and not being able to really rescue that because I'd sold the old body off, I decided that actually I'd like to get another altered again. I did actually buy a brand new T-body to go on the chassis of the funny car, and I thought, like in some cases, because
that would have been shorter though, wouldn't it?
no, well, you can still use the same chassis, the same running gear. All you're doing is you're transferring a funny car to an altered body, and I've got the body there, so I could swatch them over, and that would probably have been the cheapest way of driving an altered, because in the States they have these what they call alternates. So basically, some guys have funny car on one meeting, and they'll put a altered body on the next meeting, but they still run it on a 125-inch wheelbase chassis. So in terms of a funny car, if you look at some of the high-end altereds, they are much a funny car build, but with an altered body on it. And I thought actually that might be the way to do it, so I could still drive my altered, and I could still have the funny car. But in the corner of my barn, workshop, whatever you like to call it, I kind of sitting there was another Topolino body, which I thought it would really make a lovely altered. There was some idea that I was going to turn it into a hot rod, because I'd been sort of doing a little bit of research, and there were a few kicking around in the States, and there's a lady I think it's in Sweden that's got one, and she's hot rodded a Topolino. But I still think that it was turning it into a hot rod actually was probably going to be just as it probably, if not as expensive as turning it into a drag car, really.
Yeah.
So the funny car was sitting there, the altered, the Topolino altered body was sitting there, and I thought actually I could have both, but it would now require to be nostalgic. It would have to be a lot smaller, because obviously you're running on a 100-inch wheelbase and not 125 inches, you know.
And also this one's steel.
And this one's steel, yeah. So that makes it even more unique in as far as that the steel-bodied Topos, which were around probably a few in the 60s and 70s in America, they've all disappeared. Most people use fiberglass because it's easier to work with, it's lighter, but putting my nostalgic hat on, I think that choosing to do a steel one was going to be a little bit unique again, you know, and a more of a project really. And I think this, again, when you've been in racing cars and had such a wide variety of cars, I know this is probably going to be my last build because I'm not getting any younger. So I wanted to do something a little bit special.
And it's going to be fun as well.
And it's going to be fun, yeah.
Yeah.
They're not really designed to go that fast. They go fast, but because of the body style.
But it's the fun as well, and you know,
And having something nostalgic as well, period, was quite important to me, you know, and having this car as my sort of last project in a roundabout way. I wanted to be something special, and being a steel one was probably going to make that a little bit extra special.
So, have you got a plan for this new thing coming out, or are you not saying at the minute without shouting from the rooftops?
I'm not sort of I suppose really I've kind of sort of kept it a little bit. There are a few people that know, because obviously people wander into the workshop where the car's being put together, so generally a few people know, particularly in that small circle, but I've not really shouted from the rooftops yet. I suppose I just felt that I wanted to make sure that the car was well underway before I felt that I wanted to sort of make it big news, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I just feel in the drag racing world that it is big news, because you know I'm doing a car that's not only nostalgic, but it's a steel, and we're running pretty much a nitro engine in it. So
Yeah.
yes, a bit special.
Fun.
Yes, a bit
Definitely.
special.
So we'll look forward to seeing that at some point. And you know, there's plenty of meetings this year could turn up in, I guess. And yeah,
Well, we're trying to. I mean, the plan is, along with Andy, that's obviously doing a lot of the construction at the moment, is that we're trying to get it ready for Dragstalgia this year. The idea is, if I can get it to the Dragstalgia completed, great. If it's running, better. You know, because obviously I'd like it running. There's no reason why it shouldn't run, but obviously. When you
because you haven't got a re-license or anything with it. So.
Not really, no. I mean, obviously, I don't think anybody will let you on the track if you haven't got really any experience.
No,
but,
absolutely no.
So I think that it'll be interesting, because I know, oddly enough, I know that Nick Davis is doing something similar, which is great. So I think in my mind's eye, I would really like it that we end up both side by
side exhibition, possibly
on the track. Yeah. What a coup that would be.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. This will go on Euro Dragster as well, so it's going to raise a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So that's the plan.
Superb. Thank you very much for doing this. We'll do it again when we catch up with you.
Yeah.
After, see how you're getting on.
Yeah.
And
nice.
So Bob Glassup, thank you very much indeed.
Nice to meet you guys.
Thank
All right.
you. Cheers.
All the best.
Thank you.